Even if the world ends, humans will do everything they can to survive. Even if it means discarding their humanity. Mankind lives in despair while muttering words of hope. However, a boy had a dream to become a musician when he grew up. He asks his companion what he wants to become someday. Because once he was in middle school, he was going to get a job and buy a guitar and write 100 songs before high school. His companion told him that he will realize how ridiculous his sounds are. But the boy ignores his companion and starts humming. Then he imagined that it was an event and introduced the superstar himself, Kamiya Taoshiru, as lead vocals. And on bass, his companion, Aora Yumiko. His companion never agreed on anything, but he ignored him again and continued with his humming. He even does it in a more loud voice, which is why his companion seems irritated. Furthermore, 100 years have passed since the thick, heavy clouds began blocking the sunlight. Transfloration is a newly developed technology that turns humans into plants in order to take their place. A seed is implanted into the body of a dying person, and the plant uses that person's soul as sustenance to grow. Humans who have undergone transfloration can turn into a variety of plants over the course of 2 years. Meanwhile, on the operation table, that transfloration was already done by Yumiko-sen. Her assistant asked her if she needed more forceps, but she refused since she was already done with the operation. She gave orders to stitch up the incision site. However, trees, foliage, and flowers that have undergone transfloration are generally referred to as spirit blossoms. Spirit's blossoms produce oxygen under weak light, and everyone is able to live in that oxygen. Yumiko can hear the patients aching. While washing their hands, her companion looks frustrated because he felt like he just killed a person. According to Yumiko, they were prolonging their life. The previous patient they operated wouldn't have even lasted a month as humans, so now he'll just make up for any lost time. Then the man asks her if they can really call a person alive once they've turned into a blossom. Yumiko doesn't know since nobody gives a crap about it because all they want is the 10 million yen payout. Transfloration is ethically limited to those who are about to die, and that is up to the individual to decide whether they wish to undergo that medical procedure or not. For those who undergo transfloration, the government pays 10 million yen in financial support post-surgery, on which they spend the next 2 years of their lives as they please until they have completed their transformation into spirit blossoms. Anyway, Taoshiru thought that if only he could get that 10 million yen, he would be able to eat a sandwich rather than a piece of small bread. He was shaking because her mother was holding a knife silently looking at the window. Her medication is enough for that day, so he needs to drop by the doctor's again. He seems nervous but remains quiet. Then his mother approached him to cut his arm. He leaves his mother for work as if nothing happens. He was working at the factory and paid 90,000 yen per month for a 14-hour commitment. He is making less than minimum wage, but there's no other place that will hire a high school dropout like him. His eyes became blurry, but he continued his work. 30,000 for rent, 5,000 for utilities, 15,000 for taxes, and 20,000 for his mom's meds. Which leaves them with less than 20,000, which isn't enough for him and his mom to live on. He already uses everything they can get from social security and welfare. However, he looked at the clock. His eyes widened because it's time for the higher-ups to rounds. He hadn't finished a single board, so he had to hurry up. But he couldn't focus on his work since his eyes were still blurry. If he doesn't go faster, he will be in trouble. He was shaking and cursing at the same time. He saves 1,000 yen a month by cutting down food expenses. He was saving money to change his career. To change it, he needs education, and to get an education, he needs money. There are times where he needs to try to stave off his hunger by licking raw potato starch. If he doesn't find another job and stays in that place, he'll die. He was working at that company for 3 years and saved 20,000 yen. Then the higher-ups stop on his station. The boy was sweating in fear. The man noticed that he hadn't finished a single board, so the man told him that he would never pay him for that month. He burst into tears because he couldn't afford the tuition he needed to change his life. After that, he went to the hospital and talked to a doctor. He kneels down, begging the man for some money because her mom will go berserk without her medication. Once she loses her temper, it's impossible for him to stop her. The doctor says that his reason was the same as last week, so he was told to leave. Taoshiru went home and was shocked to see his mom holding a knife again and waiting for him. Their house is messy while money was scattered on the floor. His eyes widened because his mom was out of meds, so it was a big help. But he noticed that the money was still on the envelope, which means it was his tuition money where he hid in the soles of his shoe. He was shaking in fear because her mom was staring blankly at him. Then told that he had money, but he lied to her. Taoshiru wanted to say something, but his mother exclaimed that he couldn't hide anything from her. The mother was shaking and held tight on the knife. So he explained to her that the money that she saw, he was going to use it to go back to high school. But his mother didn't listen and quickly rushed towards him, so he immediately ran to save his life. He was terrified, while kept on running, but his mother was following him. He burst into cry, questioning why he was suffering that kind of life. Then he lost his balance and fell on the ground. As a result, his mother catches him and pierced the knife on him. He didn't move even an inch and just let his mother do whatever she wanted. He just stared at the withered flower on the garbage bin. In the hospital, someone calls Yumiko because there's someone coming to counter for applying for a transfloration. If she could talk to them, that would be great because it means money is coming. So Yumiko put on her lab coat and left to see the patient. She rode on the elevator and immediately opened the door. To her surprise, Taoshiru was already there. Their eyes met. Then the latter suddenly ached while holding his stomach where blood was flowing out. Yumiko stated that Taoshiru was really dying based on the lab result. The latter agreed, then handed her his medical result. He got stage 5 small intestine cancer. So he asks Yumiko to hurry and implant the seed in his body since he likes to be one of those beautiful blossoms. Yumiko seems worried for his friend. but she needed to run for a few quick tests for starters to see if his record matched or not. From an ethical standpoint, only individuals who are near death can undergo a transfloration procedure. The personnel working at the National Transfloration Institute will approve or deny the request for the procedure based on their assessment of the applicant's remaining time left. Anyway, Yumiko remembers when they were still kids when someone broke Taoshiru's piano. He was furious at the same time crying, so they went to their teacher to report that some random geezer went and broke it. Taoshiru was worried that his mom would get mad at him again. The teacher asks them if they do something to the old man. Yumiko replied that they were just playing with the piano just like they usually do. She was furious and promised that he would 100% kill that geezer. She even told the teacher to pipe down as if the sound of the old man laughing isn't 100 times more obnoxious. Then she bows her head and says that she put up with the old man the entire time, but she couldn't continue her words because the teacher suddenly became silent. Taoshiru seems worried if they did something wrong. His tears couldn't stop from flowing and says he couldn't stand that adults in that world were always angry. Then the teacher stared at him and said that the dark clouds shroud everyone's hearts in darkness. They reject others and reduce them to what they can observe. It might be difficult for the two to understand since they were still a child. So she reminds them to possess spiritual happiness so that they won't end up on the same path. Nevertheless, Yumiko rushes into him. She was confused, then asked him why he lied about having small intestine cancer. He didn't think that Yumiko actually tested him, so he told her that he figured out she wouldn't accept if he said it was for suicide. Yumiko burst into anger because he was tested positive for over 150 chemical substances and microorganisms in his bloodstream. He accused him of purposely ingesting industrial wastewater so that he could get on his hand the 10 million yen allowance. Then she told him to go to the hospital. They might be able to save him if he undergoes dialysis and cleanse all the toxins from his body. Taoshiru didn't move an inch since he didn't have that kind of money to undergo such things. He was not like her, a government employee. He asks her why she was causing such a reaction when it seems she gets lots of people like him. Yumiko ignored him and told to hurry up. Taoshiru didn't follow. He bowed his head and said that he didn't have money for food. He clenched his fist, his way of restraining what he felt. So Yumiko told him not to worry about the food, but she can't continue her words because Taoshiru burst into anger. He claimed that it was not just the food. He got into debt while hunting for a job. His mom medications, rent, oxygen, and tax. All of that he badly needed money. Yumiko exclaimed that none of that mattered if he was dead. He reasoned out that he didn't want to think about money anymore. All he wanted was to live peacefully as a plant. So he lied about his cancer so that Yumiko can do the procedure for transfloration. His eyes widened when Yumiko asked him if he realized what transfloration actually is. Then she pointed to a plant on the wall. He was going to end up as a plant food, unable to take a single step, even though his mind was still intact. Who knows, he might live in constantly excruciating pain. Yumiko was shocked when Taoshiru exclaimed that he will take the 10 million yen to buy his spiritual happiness. Because for him, there isn't a single good thing about being alive. So he begged Yumiko to do the procedure on him. 5 days have passed since that conversation. Taoshiru's transfloration procedure seems to have been successful. It was a relief for Yumiko. After that, she stretches her body after a tiring day. She plans to go to a place since it's been a while since her last visit. She arrives at the place, then checks the plants on the way. She hadn't no idea that plants could talk, although she couldn't understand. When she opened the door, she was surprised when she saw Taoshiru lying on the ground. What surprises her more is he looks beaten up. His blood can be seen on the ground. He told her that all the money got stolen. The plant says it's sensing intense anger. Yumiko was shocked when he also added that he will go to the police after he takes a short break. So she asked him if he could understand what the plants were saying. Taoshiru seems confused, so he asks Yumiko if people don't just understand them once they go through transfloration. But the latter never heard of that case, so she told no. Later on, they went into the restaurant. Taoshiru can't help but eat like there's no tomorrow. But then, he suddenly burst into tears because the food tasted so good since he can't remember the last time he had meat. The food for two costs about 80,000 yen, so he assumes that Yumiko, as government workers, are really on a different level. He suddenly froze when Yumiko told him that food is her spiritual happiness. Later on, Taoshiru asked Yumiko if his blood has been toxified, and is it okay not to undergo dialysis. She replied that the seed has most likely cleansed his body of any toxins. The seed's ability to repair its host is quite potent. Then out of the blue, she asked him if he was not kidding about being able to understand the spirit's blossoms. Taoshiru looks confused, so she explains that it's a general term for any plants that have undergone transfloration. The latter says he does understand them. He even pointed to a plant on his back. That plant says he's been expecting something from him for a while. Yumiko's jaw dropped. Then she told him that in approximately 2 years, Taoshiru won't be able to function as a human anymore. It's a miracle at death's door that he is somehow able to converse with the spirit blossoms. She also added that she needs his help to find a spirit blossoming. Taoshiru drinks his water, then asks what kind of person she is looking at. Yumiko answered that she's a crazy woman whose goal was to go to Antarctica. Of course she was going to pay him for his efforts. Taoshiru agreed and promised to do whatever she wanted as long as the money came rolling in. She suddenly punched in the air when he agreed to the work that she offered. Yumiko peeled a candy and put it in her mouth. They went for a walk. She stretches his body since she feels like she can last for another month after their meal. On their way, Taoshiru was stunned when she saw a poster of a piano concert, led by a name Matsuno Sumi, that cost 100,000 for one ticket. Yumiko knew how much Taoshiru loves music, so she suggested that he save up his money and go since it's the spiritual happiness that he wants. She pointed at the poster saying it will enrich someone's soul. Taoshiru left her since it was too expensive, 100,000 yen just for a concert. Furthermore, they went to the Transfloration Institute waiting room. An old man approached them, and according to Yomiko, he was the chief. The old man sat on the couch and introduced himself as Herjishi Jin, the chief of Nun. Nun means he isn't tied up overseeing a particular section, it's a high-ranking position. Taoshiru introduced himself, but it seems Jin already knew about him. The latter turns to Yomiko and asks about the thing that she wanted to tell him. After a while, Jin fell into deep thoughts, analyzing what Yomiko had said. Then he asks Taoshiru if it is true that he can tell what nearby spirit blossoms are feeling and wants to use ability to temporarily work in their institution. Taoshiru agreed, but he made it clear that it's not their words that he understands but more of their feelings. Jin seems curious, so he asks him again about their personality or what they say when no one's around. Taoshiru replied it varies from person to person. One might be screaming about something, another might be asking for water. He also added that he can't hear anything from anyone who's been a spirit blossom for a long time. Jin assumes that they've exhausted their entire human soul. He even asks Taoshiru about the feelings of the spirit blossoming on his back. The latter stares at the plants and simply replies that they are puzzled. Jin was confused since he already figured it out without even listening to it, so he added that they are anticipating their fate, warning itself if there's something Jin wants him to do. Then Jin stands up and asks the two to come with him. They climb the stairs. On their way, he told them that it's not that systematic. It's more like an emotional outburst. Jin seems still curious about the spirit blossoms sounds that they make, if it automatically translates into their language with him acting as a medium. Since he mentioned earlier that there was a spirit blossom screaming about something, they reach the top floor and enter a room, but Taoshiru remains silent. They walk inside of the room. Jin turns to him and asks him again if that something is incomprehensible to humans or if it's just that he can't translate it in his head. Taoshiru didn't know the answer. Then Jin pointed at a plant and asked what it was saying. Taoshiru stares at the plant who seems to be whispering something. He apologized because he didn't understand what the plants were saying. Jin presumes that it's making some kind of noise, so it must be saying something. But Taoshiru still didn't know. He was sweating when Jin turns to them and says that it's only been a year since the person fully transitioned into a spirit blossom. He doesn't need an ability like Taoshiru to know that someone was lying. If the latter can hear what it's saying, he will hire him. On the other hand, Sumi was having a concert. Everybody listens attentively. Even the plants on the ceiling seemed like her music, so she gave her best shot. However, Jin sat down on the couch while waiting for Taoshiru's answer regarding what the plants have to say. The latter was confused and at the same time worried. What if Jin didn't hire him, or what if he can't understand the plant? How he can survive for tomorrow. He was sweating while focused on the plants because he knew the plant was making meaningful sounds. But he still couldn't figure it out. He was worried about what to do because all he can do is listen. Yumiko was about to say something to the chief, but the man cut her off and told to be quiet. Taoshiru tightly clasped his hand and closed his eyes. Finally, he can hear it, but he keeps on listening and focused until all he can hear is the sound of the plants. He was shocked when he finally heard it said Antarctica, but he didn't tell them because he was confused about whether it was heading for or heading to. He looks at Yomiko and Jin, then turns his head again on the plants. Jin seemed to understand that he couldn't hear, so he stood up and told them to come to that place tomorrow, at the same time. When the two were alone, Yomiko gave him a thumbs up. But to her shock, Taoshiru suddenly fell on the ground and vomited. Yumiko, who looks worried, rushes towards him. She was calling his name, but he ignored her because he felt his head's going to explode. He promised himself that he will never do it again. On the other hand, the audience remained silent while listening to Sumi's music until the end. Sumi stood up and received a round of applause from the audience. But she ignored the audience since her focus was on the plant on the back. Those plants bloomed for 6 minutes. Inside the room, an old woman commented to Sumi that her performance was uninspiring. A man interrupts them and says that their time is already up, so it's his turn. The old woman told the man to look in the clock because they still have 5 more minutes to go. Then she turned again at Sumi and asked the girl if she was listening to her. She told her that the flowers bloomed for 6 minutes at her recital. Sumi answered that roughly 60% of the audience was deeply moved by her performance. But it looks like she was wrong because the old woman exclaimed to her that she was just barely passing. She was Matsuno's daughter, but her score was only 60%. The old woman asks her why she sounds so unenthusiastic. She was going to be a plant for the rest of her life, so why was she worried? The old woman also added that her music has no emotion and asked what was on her mind. What is it that makes her tense? The next day, Yumiko and Taoshiru went into the Transfloration Institute Facility B. The latter asks his friend about his salary. Yumiko told her that special provisional employees received 150,000 yen as a base salary plus the commission. She also added that he will be working here as a special provisional employee, so he had to make sure he didn't forget his title. Then she gave him his employee ID badge. Yumiko also told him that his job is to carefully go through each and every blossom search request that's been sent to the Transfloration Institute. Taoshiru noted it, but he wanted to be honest with them. So he told them that the number of requests trumps the number of cases resolved. And the department is barely functioning as it is, but everyone is still getting paid. Other employees didn't like his words and called him cruel. Yumiko was surprised when he added that anything that nets him over 90,000 yen a month is fine with him. Then she gave him the employee's handbook where he could give a quick overview of the rules and important laws that he should be aware of as an employee. Then Yumiko's badge suddenly beeps and says that there's not enough people manning the counter. She was about to leave, but before she could do, Taoshiru asked her if she was in charge of overseeing the counters. She replied that she does almost everything, that's why she doesn't belong to a specific section. She also reminds him that the badge has a call function, so if he gets called, he must come right away. Then she leaves the office. After Yumiko left, the door opened again. It was Jin saying good luck to them. After that, Yumiko went to a room where a patient was waiting. She introduced herself and looked at the patient. To her surprise, it was the pianist, but she couldn't recall her name, so Sumi introduced herself. She claims that she was still a student and her skills are far from being a pianist. She suddenly sniffed as if wanted to cry. Yumiko told her that she still held a concert and was not an ordinary feat. Sumi didn't reply. That's why Yumiko looked and analyzed her. She assumed that Sumi was sick and came to that place in hopes of transfloration. Sumi told her that she was not sick. She came there because of her father, to search for her father's spirit blossom. Meanwhile, Taoshiru went outside of the institute and sat on a bench. He looked up at the sky and felt nice because of the light that hit him. He took the handbook and read it. It stated that humans are owned by the state. Woods are precious resources. Trees not of Han and Oregon are cultivated, but their numbers are too little to keep up demand. Furniture, paper, clothing, and others can be manufactured from recyclable plastic and metal. He was impressed at the institute because they are using paper made from plastic. He was irritated because he knew there's tons of wood products in rich people's homes. And those people will pay extra to purchase spirit blossoms. He continues his reading, but then suddenly stops when he notices something on his body. He lifted up his jacket. He was sweating when he saw tiny leaves emerging on his stomach. He calms himself and says that he will be fine. He still has 2 years left, so he will live his life to the fullest since 2 years is all he needs. Then his badge suddenly rang. It was Yumiko telling him that she got some work for him. She told him to come to room C on the second basement level. He replied that he will be there. After that, he went into the room and seemed confused when he saw Sumi. Yumiko, who seems excited when she told him that she can't believe that it's the pianist that they saw in the poster the other day. He looked at her visitor's badge where Sumi's real name was written. He became serious and asked Sumi what her reason for coming to the institute was. Yumiko was stunned when he also says that he hates filthy rich people, so she pinches his ears and yells at him. But Sumi was not bothered and told that she wants to find her father's spirit blossoming. Her father used the financial support that he received from his transfloration surgery to put her through college. But he hasn't come back ever since the day he got transflores. She was now a pianist thanks to her father, but she wants to properly mourn for her. She also said that she was definitely not filthy rich. Yumiko seems touched by her stories, so she asks her about her father's name and approximate age. Her father's name is Matsuno Shaogo, probably around 51 years of age when he went missing. So she asks Taoshiru to get the father's medical records and personal documents. It looks like the latter didn't believe in Sumi's stories and gave her a glare before he left. Later on, they found the records of Matsuno. He was born in 2268. A piano lecturer at the Second Kunitachi College of Music. According to his record, the reason for his transfloration and cause of death is mercury poisoning. In other words, suicide. Sumi looks confused because based on what they told her, she believes there's a high possibility that he underwent transfloration to qualify for the financial support. So she asks if that can cause any problems. Yumiko explained to her that her father was already poisoned when he first came to the institute, so it would have been hard to refuse transfloration for him. She was surprised when Taoshiru interrupts and says that the man doesn't have money despite being a college lecturer. Yumiko was irritated because she already told him to watch his language. Sumi was speechless and didn't want to interrupt when the two started to argue. However, she asks them if they know how her father went missing. Yumiko explained that it's common to see transflorated people leave with their families since they can't stand the thought of themselves changing. A Sawafutagi seed was implanted into her father. Since it's been 3 years since he was transflores, he should be close to a full-grown Sawafutagi tree by now. When people like that look for a place to die, most times they end up in their workplace, so they need to find a Sawafutagi tree on campus. Sumi understood. But then she asked since Sawafutagi is a type of garden tree that can be found anywhere. So how will they be able to tell which one is her father? That is the real reason why the Kissing Spirit Blossom Division, the department that Taoshiru was assigned to, is close to defunct. When a person has completely transitioned into a spirit blossom, it becomes very difficult to prove their identity. Anyway, Sumi was surprised when Yumiko told her that Taoshiru can speak directly with the spirit blossoms. Later on, Sumi waved her goodbye to the two. She was about to leave when Yumiko told her that they will call her once they found his father. Sumi noticed that Yumiko wanted to add something, so she waited for her. At first, the latter seems hesitant, but then she asks her if they could get 2 tickets to her piano recital if ever they find his father's spirit blossoming. Taoshiru became furious since he didn't need that garbage because all he wanted was the 100,000 yen in hard cash. Yumiko yells at him back, claiming that it was for his own good. She also asks him to grow up. Sumo didn't mind. She will give her 2 tickets as long as they find his father. Yumiko was delighted because Sumi agreed with her. But Taoshiru seems irritated because she previously asked him to grow up, but it looks like Yumiko, who's in need to be grown. Then the latter's badge rings, so she leaves the two because the institute needed her. Sumi asked him why he was still there. She was furious and let out her anger when he answered that he was being hostile, waiting for her to leave first. There she was desperately trying to find her father when all he did was look down on her. She belittles Taoshiru for being able to talk to spirit blossoms. If he was going to lie, at least make it plausible. Taoshiru was not bothered by her anger and said she was desperately searching for her father for about 3 years. When Sumi told him that she had already made requests to the police detective agency already, he cut her off and told that she was lying, and the truth is, Sumi hated her father. Sumi was shocked when he also added that when she was talking about her father at the counter earlier, the spirit blossoms nearby could sense hatred coming from her. Because spirit blossoms are sensitive to human emotions, he asks her what she's going to do when she finds her father's spirit blossoms. According to the very first paragraph in the employee's handbook, spirit blossoms are state-owned resources, so their destruction is prohibited. He knows it because he was something special. He formed an evil smile and told her that if she pays him, he will help her destroy her father's spirit blossoms. Then Sumi finally talks. She wants to burn down her father's spirit blossoms. Sumi was sitting down on a couch while a doll was tied up hanging on the ceiling. She grabs a lighter and turns it on. She seems like thinking of ways on how to burn it. When she was a kid, her father used to carry her in his back. It looks like she was pretending to like it. Her father told her that they will start to work on her piano lesson. But it seems like it's her father's idea and not hers, so she just simply answers okay. She could still remember those things up until now. Anyway, Taoshiru and Sumi were at a train station waiting for it to arrive. He seems anxious if they were being followed, but as he looks around the area, he doesn't think they are not. They hop in the train and Taoshiru found a seat for him, so he asked her if she didn't mind, which is why Sumi was speechless since he already grabbed the seat. He was worried that if words came out that an employee helped burn down his spirit blossoms, he would be dead. He thought maybe if he gets caught, he could reason that he didn't think Sumi was going to light the spirit blossom on fire or something like that. They were both in deep thoughts when a kid suddenly played his piano. They both stare at the kid and listen to his music. To start some conversation, Taoshiru asks Sumi if she likes playing the piano. He was astounded when she told that she didn't like it. Instead, she hated it. According to her, it was just something she was forced to do. There was a time when her father had no mercy when it came to playing the piano. If she made even the slightest mistakes, he'd yell at her with a ferocious look on his face. He would beat her, kick her, and throw things at her. He would do that over and over until she could play the piece perfectly. Taoshiru assumes that it's the reason why she wants to set her father on fire. Sumi agreed because her father still hunts her whenever she plays the piano up to that day, even though he's been long dead. They arrived at the second Kunitachi College of Music. They wander around the area, but Taoshiru was worried if they were allowed in that area. Because the spirit blossoms in the forest supposed to be off limits to the public. Sumi reasoned that the spirit forest is adjacent to the university, so that place is more or less considered to be in university grounds. He notices that the spirit forest is wide, so he asks her how much, but it is. He looks disappointed when he finds out that its size is no different from a small mountain. They continue to wander around. He was sweating and assumed that there was no way they were going to find her father. The last time that he barely exerted himself ended up passing out the entire day and slept in the lobby for the whole day. He thought he was going to die in there, so he should find a way out of that. Then he noticed something, so he signaled her to stop. Then he led the way. He thought that it's been 3 years since her father went missing, and she maybe can't tell if a tree was her father. He just needed to find a young-looking tree, and she'll be satisfied. They ended up in a young-looking tree. He told her that he can see her father's face in it since he remembers his medical records. He asks her to burn it down right away before anyone shows up. But Sumi turned away and told him he's a liar. He was surprised, so he followed her and apologized because she might not pay him. Worst of all, she might tell the institute about it, and he will be fired. Sumi turns to look at him and asks what's sorry for. That tree was not a Sawafutagi no matter how much she looked at it. She asks him if he forgot what was in those medical records that Yumiko showed them. Taoshiru remembers it and claims that he almost forgot. He promised that next time he will do it right. Sumi clenched her fist and asked him the meaning of his next time. She made it clear that she was going to burn down her father's spirit no matter what it takes. Taoshiru asks if she was scared. If she was, then why didn't she quit being a pianist? Her voice trembles when she says that her parents gave up their life for money and died to pay for her college. If something like that happens to her, then she has no choice but to become a pianist. But obviously she doesn't want to play piano. But how a woman like her is supposed to survive alone in a place like that? If she quit being a pianist and finds another job, she will end up in the sex industry, factories, or customer service. The piano is all she has. That's all she has been doing all her life because she wasn't allowed to do anything else. That's why she wants to erase her father from her mind. It's not that she's being forced to play piano, which she detests, but that's what she wants to be able to play at the least. Taoshiru changed the topic and said that he can't actually find spirit blossoms. He has no idea where her father could be in a spirit forest that big. It's only once they find the spirit blossoms that confirming its identity becomes his job. All he can do is listen to the voices coming from the spirit blossom. Sumi cut him off and told that his words sounded incompetent to her. Which is why Taoshiru suggests leaving the searching to the pros. Then he took his badge and called Yumiko. The latter told him to go find Matsuno's resting place himself. Just pick up any sounds he hears in a 5-kilometer radius. When he told her that he was going to die on her suggestion, she laughed and said that she was just kidding. She explained that the first thing that comes to mind is that he was a piano player and instructor. So chances are high that he completed his transfloration within hearing a range of a piano. And since Matsuno was working at a university, there should be a spirit forest nearby. That's the usual case for most major facilities. But in terms of layout, she doubts it allows for Transflora's plants to occupy the front of the building. He should be somewhere away from the main entrance, but as close to the piano recital room as possible. But incidentally, the Sawafutagi is a monoecious plant with white flowers that blooms at the tip of the branch. The statement is so fluffy that it resembles a sparkler when observed from a distance, so Taoshiru ended the call and started to wander around again. However, when Taoshiru ended the call, Yumiko went into the cafeteria to grab something to eat. She thought Taoshiru was working all hard on his own. It looks like she was worried for nothing. She ate shrimp and mushroom soup and was glad that it hit the spot. On the other hand, Taoshiru and Sumi were still wandering around in the spirit forest. The latter remembers the old lady telling her that the only reason people are fawning over her is because she's young, so she needs to learn how to make the piano on her own. An old man asked her once if she was really Matsuno's daughter because he found her boring. She clenched her fist while thinking of their words. Then, her eyes widened when Taoshiro asked her to stop because the latter heard something. Although the plants were really talking, Sumi couldn't hear them. Taoshiro suddenly stopped and said that the sound was coming in the tree in front of them. Sumi was surprised because it was really a Salafutagi tree. The entire tree is facing the school building. She asks Taoshiro if that tree was really her father. The latter looked at the tree and listened to its sound. He said that he's been complaining about the piano playing the entire time. Sumi stares at the tree and comments that his father hasn't changed a bit. She took out her lighter and turned it on. But she looks confused, then she slowly brings the fire close to the leaf. Taoshiro observed that she looked hesitant, but she quickly replied that she was not, because her father can sense her hesitation and anguish. So he suggested that she should stop if she was having second thoughts. Sumi burst into tears because her gratitude to him for raising her is getting her way. Her childhood looks not different from other children since she's been well taken care of by her father. Her tears didn't stop because whether he is a good father or not, she was still not sure. But his violence is the one thing she can't forgive. That he was absolutely wrong for that. Then she asked him to translate it for her. When Taoshiro didn't respond, she yelled at him and asked to translate her words to her father. So the latter yelled back and told her that the most he can do is just listen to the plant. It looks like she lost her temper yelling at him to pass her message because that is the one thing she wants to tell him. She doesn't want to end up being a one-man show. It looks like Taoshiro was having a hard time translating Sumi's words. The sound of the spirit blossoms always sounds like jamming the signal, so how would he begin to interpret them? Just listening to them makes his head spin. How else would he translate it? Sumo suddenly shouted, asking him to translate her words again, that she will never forgive him. She was crying and begging Taoshiro to do it. The latter already told her that she can't, but it looks like she was not listening. He has no other choice and talks to the tree, telling it that her daughter will never forgive him. He even mentions Sumi's name. The latter gets into panic whenever she plays piano. She was waiting for a response from her father, but there's no replies until her lighter went out. She observed that the fuel may run out. She asks Taoshiro again if there is a response. When the latter told her that there's nothing, she threw the lighter on the ground and sat down on the ground, silently crying. Taoshiro, on the other hand, suddenly curses when the twig of the tree crawls until it reaches his shirt. They were both shocked because they didn't expect such a thing. The latter touched it, then Sumi asked him to say it for her, that she will never forgive him. Because of him, she hates playing the piano. Because she never wanted to play it, but he forced her. So every time she messed up, he would hit her and yell at her. So Taoshiro repeated what Sumi had told. Then the tree made a soft crackling sound. Sumi looks flustered when the tree makes a sound and Taoshiro translates to her that hatred that her father sensed was coming from her. He asked why she was holding a grudge against him after all. He even asks if she doesn't like piano or if she hates it. She remains silent. But when the father asked her if she quit, she immediately exclaimed that she hasn't quit, but it's always painful for her. Every time she plays, she can feel his presence. She blames her father for being in panic whenever she played piano. Taoshiro repeated her words so her father could understand. Sumi's father told her that there isn't a single person in that sun-forsaken world who can live happily with the path they've chosen. No oxygen, no money. That is the injustice that everyone must live with. While saying those words, Taoshiro remembers her mother. Anyway, Sumi's father continued and said that it's only natural that life should be hard inside the darkness. Sumi didn't understand how fortunate she was. Through the piano and the transfloration money, he bet that he was keeping her alive. Sumi clenched her teeth while looking at the tree. Taoshiro saw how she cried, so he asked the father how she was supposed to reply since his words are a bit cruel. He remembers her mother, how she beat her. That's why he can't control his feelings and yells at the tree, asking him to say his sorry to Sumi. Because the father had no idea how terrified she was because of him and his Spartan way of teaching. Moments have passed. Finally, Taoshiro says that Sumi's father said sorry. But the latter called him a liar and didn't believe. Because the father wouldn't never say sorry to Sumi. She didn't notice something was flowing out of the tree. The father always yells at her, telling her that there is no option to survive. He was doing it for her. One day, she will thank her father and think that it was because of their practice that she was able to find happiness. Claiming that he doesn't need anything as long as Sumi succeeds as a pianist. But the latter didn't pay attention to him just like the old times. So her father grabbed her hair until some of it fell down. She was begging him to stop. And now, her father didn't realize before how he ignored her feelings. When she couldn't stop sobbing or when she looked at him with those hate-filled eyes, it should have been obvious at a glance. Her father was crying because he didn't realize that he was abusing her while he was still alive. Taoshiro widened his eyes when he heard the word sorry. But it looks like Suki didn't hear it, so she furrowed her brow and grabbed the lighter. If her father thought that she would forgive him, he's wrong. She was trying to turn the lighter on, but it couldn't since it ran out of fuel. Until she gives up and says that she'll make her father into a piano. He'd better prepare himself because she was going to take her into a woodshop with all his roots and everything. Taoshiro suddenly felt a pain in his head, so he held his head, but it looks like it didn't lessen the pain. His eyes widened before he suddenly collapsed on the ground. Sumi unexpectedly turned her eyes into him when she heard a heavy sound coming from his fallen body. 4 days later, Yumiko and Taoshiro went into the Karakigan Cultural Hall. The latter was lying on the couch, so Yumiko asked him to get up since the concert was about to start. He told Yumiko that he really wants 100,000 yen more than watching a concert that barely cost that much. It is not worth it since after that concert, he has to scrape by on his living expenses. Yumiko couldn't believe that he's still caught up in the amount. They were there because they were invited, and it's not like he actually spent money for that. They went inside and found their seat. He noticed the artificial flowers hanging on the ceiling. But it's not artificial because those are also spirit blossoms and called hall flowers. They're a visual gauge of how satisfied the audience is. They also supply oxygen inside that enclosed space. Out of the blue, Yumiko asks him how much he gets. But it looks like Taoshiru hesitated to tell, so she made it clear that she was not going to take his money if that's his concern. Her eyes widened when Taoshiru whispered to him that he got 1,000,000 yen, but he already used most of it to cover his unpaid taxes. Yumiko praised him for doing a great job despite how things turned out. Then leaned into her shoulder and burst into tears, because that is the first time in 10 years someone's told him he did a good job. After a while, the crowd gave a round of applause when Sumi went onto the stage. She walked into her piano and sat down to start the show. At first, she still felt fear, but then determined not to look back in fear anymore. Because once she makes her father into a piano, he will be under her gaze and within her clutches. She formed a smile yet teary eyes since she was pleased that her father had left. She will give the audience a god-awful performance, play him with greasy hands, and let random kids touch the piano. Now is her turn to have him in her way. Taoshiru, along with the other audience, intently listened to her music. Sumi felt sorry because previously, she let her fear block her good performance. But now that she overcame it, flowers were falling from the hanging spirit blossoms in the ceiling. It looks like even they were amazed by her performance. She finished her music and got a big round of applause. After that, she left the stage. Yumiko was crying because of that wonderful performance. Taoshiru, along with other people, started to stand up to leave the place. The latter thought it's his turn to be free. While heading home, Taoshiru stops by a store to buy a Break bar that costs 250 yen. While chewing it, he said that it's sugary. That's why Yumiko asks him if he has never had one before. He told her that he always wanted to try, but the price is too expensive, which is why he never bought one. Then he bends his head to try to hide his feelings. He told her about his mom who has some mental health problems. He should be the one to take responsibility, but he got sick of everything and ran away. Yumiko had no idea, was astonished because she had no idea what he's been through. Taoshiru promised that he was going to do something about it starting that day. He was going to look for a psychiatric hospital or home since he still had some money left. He was speechless when Yumiko asked him if he wanted her to come with him. Taoshiru went to the hospital and bought some medicine that costs 30,000 yen. He also went to the doctor and paid his debt. He even apologized for all the trouble that he caused. The doctor won't complain as long as he gets the money. Afterwards, he went into their apartment. He was hesitating on putting the key on the keyhole for him to be able to open the door. He was nervous because he might actually get killed if he does. But he realized now that he has his own money. He and her mother will make it up with one another just like Sumi did. But he was confused if that's really going to happen. If they were going to apologize to each other because it seems there's no chance that it'll happen. He was confused if he was going to knock, wrap her mother in a futon and drag her to the hospital. And after he gets her admitted, is he going to go and get his regular treatment? He asks himself if his mother will be able to discharge with a clean bill of health before the years are up and he is not able to move. If his mother will be able to go back being the mom she used to be back then who doesn't cause trouble to anyone. He finally got the courage to open the door. He was shocked to see his mother lying on the floor. He was nervous when his mother stood up when she saw him, then suddenly grabbed his shirt and slammed him on the ground. He couldn't take it anymore, so he grabbed her hair to fight back and slam her on the floor. He immediately strangled her mother and yelled at her to die. He tightly gripped and squeezed his hand on his mother's neck, which is why she was gasping for air. He was furious, but suddenly froze when he heard a plant tell him to stop because he was going to regret it. So he started to loosen his grip on her neck and bring her to the psychiatrist hospital. While he was waiting in the lobby, he called Yumiko and immediately apologized for always calling him while she was at work. The latter told him that it's fine and asked about his mother. He told her that his mother is being sedated as of the moment and will be admitted after. He told her that he was grateful to the Transfloration Institute, especially to her. Then he told her that he can't help her anymore about the nutcase girl that she mentioned she was looking for. He apologizes because he knows he looks like he's biting the hands that have been feeding him. He doesn't know what to say, but he finds his courage to tell her that he got only 2 years left and feels like he should start thinking about how he's going to spend the little time he has left. Yumiko was shocked, so she cut him off because without his ability, she can't find the girl. But it looks like even if she offers more money, she can't change his mind. Because at that moment, Taoshiru felt scared he was running out of time. He apologized again and turned off the batch. After Taoshiru ends his call, a man approaches Yumiko and tells her not to wander around the site on her own. She apologized because he had to take a personal call. She introduced her name when the man asked about it. The man also told to quit fooling around and do her job properly. Because police like him have got a lot on her plate, unlike some folks. She was asked about her thoughts on their surroundings because of the killings. She says that every spirit blossoms in the area has gone through completely transfloration. None of them have any traces of bone or muscles left remaining. All she can see are completely transitioned plants. The policeman asks her if any of them could potentially be the killer. In Yumiko's opinion, she said no. However, in the Transfloration Institute, Taoshiru was lying on the couch while he's on deep thought. He twisted and turned on the couch until he lay on the floor because he was worried that Yumiko was mad at him. Suddenly, the chief approaches him, reminding him that the floor is dirty. Jin asked him if he was actually doing any work. So he says that he's been filing the paperwork the entire time. Jin ordered him to get up since he didn't realize how gross it was on the ground, then he left him. Taoshiru got up when the chief came back with 2 cups of coffee. Out of the blue, the chief asks him what he thinks is going through his mind. Taoshiru was confused, but he stared at him. After that, he told him that anticipation and evil intentions were on his mind. Jin looked satisfied with his answer. So he stood up and asked Tao Shiru to come with him once his duty was done. Later on, they went into a place, but they are not entering. According to Jin, every Friday at 8 p.m., he meets up there with a group of friends to play games while having a drink. But he's been losing so much lately that he can't take it anymore. He can't even bring his suit to the cleaner. Tao Shiru thought that they could just not bet all his money because for him, government employees are something else. Anyway, Jin points at a table where they will be playing poker. There are 7 spirit blossoms placed around the table. He wants Tao Shiru to listen to them from where he was standing and let him know whenever any of the others think they'll win. The latter was furious since it was cheating. He exclaimed that if Jin wanted to win, he had to make use of everything he got. Jin told him that he was right. Then he asked him if he was embarrassed to see his boss walking around in a ratty old suit. Tao Shiru let out a sigh, but his attention was caught when Jin told him that he will give a cut of the money once he wins. Since he was sitting by the window, he asked Tao Shiru to look at his hand and read the other player's emotions. If he thinks he can win, pull the wire once then twice if he thinks he'll lose. Once the light in the room starts to flicker, that's their cue. Afterwards, Tao Shiru asked the chief if he was happy or if he was spiritually happy. Jin asks him if he looks pathetic to him for asking such a question. Tao Shiru looked at his belly and said that there's something sprouting from it. It's really hitting him how little time he has, and it makes him scared. He felt like he should start thinking about the meaning of life. Jin asks him if having fun isn't enough for him, if he thinks there is any meaning to being born. He was confused because he didn't know how to answer the question. After a while, Tao Shiru sat on the floor to hide. He saw that Yumiko was also there to play. An old lady asked one of the players named Kirikiri-kun to try her drink since its taste is amazing. It's an artificial whiskey made out of prisoners from 2300. The man seems grossed at the drink, so he passes. Yumiko was surprised and told the woman not to pull out black market items like that so carelessly. Kirikiri-kun asks the latter who was the guy covered with blood that she brought to his shop the other day. She told him that he was Tao Shiru and he was alive. She also added that the latter was working at the Transfloration Institute as a special provisional employee. After a while, the old lady raises her bets so Yumiko and Kirikiri-kun fold the bet. Jin, who was still waiting for Tao Shiru, couldn't decide. On the other hand, the latter was listening to them. He thought that the old lady's restlessness was definitely a bluff so Jin could win. Then he pulled the wire once to tell Jin his answer. Then he heard Jin's loud voice claiming his victory. Later on, Kirikiri-kun asks the old lady named Hanjima-san regarding the murder investigation, if the one didn't leave any trace. The old lady says that there's no lead and the investigation has nothing to do with him. Kirikiri was just curious since one of his regular customers was killed. The latter couldn't believe it when Yumiko told them that she was literally brought to the scene of the crime yesterday. She also added that a family of 3 were found dead. 14 more people have died since Kirikiri-kun last asked for an update. All the victims were attacked from behind mortally wounded. Plus no tracks were left behind at any of the crime scenes, all from the same killer. She is fairly certain those crimes were committed by a person currently undergoing transfloration. The perpetrator blends into its surroundings and goes for the kill before blending back again. Hanjima-san told them what makes things worse is that it went after one of the leaders of the anti-transfloration faction. If it turns out the culprit is a person through transflorations, it won't end with just a riot or two. So Yumiko asks her if the institution will shut down. Jin says that it will never shut down, but it'll take some extra time and paperwork to confirm the current applicant's intentions. The old lady yells at him claiming how hard it is to contain riots. Yumiko became serious and asked them how can a person whose transfloration has progressed to the point that it doesn't leave any human traces behind, killing more than 20 people in that short period of time. Little did they know, a creature was going his way up outside of a building until it reached the rooftop. Anyway, Tao Shiru seems bored and at the same time curious on how long they are going to play. Yumiko was at her house preparing a meal for herself. She remembers what Tao Shiru told her, that he was not going to help her find that nutcase girl. She was confused about what to do. She remembers 17 years ago, when she was still 8 years old. She went outside her room to tell her mom that she was already done with her homework. But her mom told her to go and do it over again. Because the other day, she still lost marks. She should be getting perfect grades on her school assignment. Her mom was teary-eyed since she sent her to cram school 5 times a week, but that is what she got, a low grade. Yumiko promised that she did it perfectly that time, so she asked her mom to let her play her games. Her mom asked her to give her the paper. She also threatens Yumiko that if she sees a single mistake, her game console's going straight into the trash. The latter bowed her head when her mom looked at her straight. She was nervous that she might have made a mistake, so she immediately told her mom that she will go over it again. Inside her room, she was furious. She even drew her mom, but later she ruined it until her mom's image vanished in the paper. Later on, she went to her school. Her mom threw her games just like she promised, so she didn't do her homework. While getting something on her locker, she saw Tao Shiru who was carrying a piano. After that, her teacher asked her to solve a problem on the board. When she perfectly did, her teacher commented that she showed her work perfectly, so her teacher told the whole class to take notes from her. On her way to her seat, she heard her classmates comment on her. That she was the teacher's pet, that she already saw the answer, that she was an overachiever, and they were scared of her eyes. So she stops in front of everyone and says that anyone can do that if they go to cram school since 6th grade is the critical time in their lives. And if they want a stable job, they have to graduate from a national university to do that. They have to get into Keio Junior High, but if that's not possible, then they can enter Tau or Seiku Junior High. If they can't get into any of those, they will have a hard time writing the national university exam because of the curriculum. She clenched her fist and boasted at her classmates that she was good at school. She belittles her classmates, assuming that they might not have a good future if they can't even get 100% after studying from their textbooks. Then she told them to go ahead and become useless adults and die for all she cares about, which is why her teacher slapped her in front of everyone. Later on, she was punished and told to write an apology letter. She was frustrated because what she's doing is dumb one. She didn't notice that she was sitting next to Taoshiru. The latter looked amazed when he saw her textbooks. He told her that she was lucky she's got the 5th edition textbook, unlike him since his family could only afford the 1st edition. He observes that it's rare and the cover is clean and shiny. After a while, Taoshiru seems to start to irritate her when he starts to blabber something that she couldn't understand. Then he searched thoroughly on his school thing and showed her some drawings. Yumiko covered her face when she saw the image, especially when Taoshiru told her that he called him horse piece. Afterwards, they were both on the floor when Taoshiru got an idea to draw all over the blackboard. Yumiko looks at him and says that she's having fun, but she has to go home. Taoshiru was surprised, so he asked her to play the next day or the day onwards. Yumiko declined his invitation because she was going to cram school. She was so sad when Taoshiru asked her when she had time to play because she didn't think she could play anymore. She explains to him that she needs to work hard so that she won't have a hard future. She asks him back what he does for his future. When he told her that he had nothing, she yelled at him and called him dumb because he would die if he thinks like that. Taoshiru knows that his future is important. But for him, the present is as important as the future. She froze for a while because of his words. So she grabbed a chalk and they made a drawing all over the board. She just wants to enjoy that present moment. Anyway, remembering those moments, Yumiko hates how awkward things have gotten between them. After Yumiko made 53 hours of post-surgery, there was a full-grown plant in the operation table. The police were shocked how it happened. Yumiko reasoned that it unleashed an explosive growth to prevent itself from dying. The police were irate because she couldn't have seen that it's coming. She knows about it, which means that this kind of thing has happened in the past. He was frustrated because Yumiko couldn't at least save the mouth of the patient so that it was able to talk. When the latter talked back to the police, he told them that she has no right considering the institute is the root of evil. However, when someone knocks on the door, they are Indua's family. When the family saw the growth plants, they burst into tears. Yumiko couldn't handle their tears, so she went outside and grabbed some coffee. She offers it to the family, but they refuse and order her to stay away from them. The old man was calling Toru, the patient, while tears kept falling down on their faces. He says that there's nothing left, even his face. The old woman just wanted to hold his hand, but they couldn't since the patient was already turned to a growth plant. Yumiko was speechless and stared blankly at the plant. Meanwhile, Taoshiru was doing his paper. He pauses for a while and tries to play the piano since he already made 10 pages. Then he stops because it's not as fun as he thought it would be even though he liked playing the piano when he was a kid. He calmed himself and thought that it'll get more fun later on. But he was confused if it will, or he's just wasting his time since it'll take him about a month to finish his book. It can make him very tired. He reminds himself about what his goal is. When he was a kid, his goal was to have a concert and compose music, but there's no way it will happen. He took his badge and called someone. Afterwards, Taoshiru went into a place where he could Yumiko. He immediately asked her if she was mad. He was confused when the latter told him she was not because her friend seems in deep thoughts, then out of the blue, she says that it's her fault for asking favor from him. Suddenly, she claps her hands as she gets an idea. First, she needs Taoshiru to listen to what the Spirit's Blossom is saying. He was the survivor of the serial murders that have been happening recently, but he ended up like that. She asks him to ask the survivor what the killer looks like, or if he saw anything before he was killed. Taoshiru was bewildered about the serial killer. Yumiko almost forgot that he can't do it, but he said that he can, since he did it before, but not sure if he can do it again. So he asked Yumiko to leave the room for a second. The latter was confused, then asked if he needed to get naked or something to increase his sensitivity for conversing with the guy. He said no, because all he needs is some peace and quiet. She was amazed when veins emerged on Taoshiru's stomach, then held onto the survivor. Then, the latter starts to ask if he remembers anything about whoever killed him or what they were exactly. But he became irritated because the survivor, according to him, was screaming, sobbing, and wary of them. Then he looks impatient and yells at the survivor to calm down and speak slower. But it looks like the survivor didn't listen to him, so he told Yumiko that there's no use since he won't be able to get anything out of him at his state. Yumiko became silent because of it. But he was surprised when the survivor said that he was happy with his life, but that is how it ends, so he asked why. Later on, they went outside of the institute. Taoshiru was surprised when Yumiko apologizes to him for forcing him to help her with her goal. For dragging him along, not even considering his feelings when he got his own life to live. So he told her that he was the one who should apologize because he broke his promise. But Yumiko insisted that it was her fault because she underestimated how short 2 years was. Then they started a happy conversation, laughing, like the old times when they were kids. When they left the place and went inside, they failed to notice something strange in the tree. The strange thing saw how happy Yumiko was, so it wanted her to die. Taoshiru turns around to look at Yumiko, who might hate him so much that she wants to kill him. But it was just his initial thoughts because he noticed the strange things were moving. So he immediately grabbed her wrist to move, but it was too late. A vein was already pierced at her stomach, then blew some blood. Before she could fall on the ground, he was able to catch her. To his shock, he heard many voices in the tree telling him to die and run. His eyes widened when the veins started to move again. Then, suddenly cursed when the spirit blossomed formed a human body, standing in front of him. Yumiko pushes him, asking him to run so he gathers his strength. Carrying Yumiko then runs at full speed as fast as he can. The spirit blossom tried to catch him using its veins. Luckily, he avoided it. He was having a hard time because he was aching for his ears. It feels like he's being assaulted. Anyway, he had to find a place with a crowd because it looked like Yomiko had already passed out. So he stops and drops her while calling Yomiko's name, begging her not to die. He suddenly looked around the place because the spirit blossoms might follow them. It was not around, but he still could sense its intent to kill. There's no way it would give up that easily. The spirit blossom was definitely hiding somewhere. He carries Yomiko again while trying to find the spirit blossom. He thought that he must pay attention to its murderous intent. He must use his ears to hear. He looked up, begging to those plants around him to let him hear them. Because what's the point of him, having that kind of power but unable to hear? He listens to his surroundings. He must forget his ears and just listen. Yomiko woke up and saw that Taoshiru changed his head. He needed to listen to his surroundings until he could hear the sounds of the entire place. On the other hand, the family of the survivor was still at the institute. A man approached them and gave his deepest condolences for the passing of their son. The old woman told him that their son isn't dead yet since he became a spirit blossom. According to the man, that may be true, but he is no longer the son they once knew and loved. He was sure that deep down, they already realized it. Their son may have been involved in a transfloration crime. A series of incidents yet to be made public show that the culprits are not mere human beings. Rather, a person who has acquired some sort of power through transflorations. However, Taoshiru kept running, looking left and right trying to avoid the spirit blossoms. That monster that has gone around and killed more than 20 people in the last 2 months has her to be caught, and it will continue to wander the streets killing left and right. On the other hand, the man continues to tell the family that it's the transfloration system that is responsible for creating that abomination. The old woman asked him who he was. The man told her that he was a solicitor for the transfloration faction. He also added that the institute has produced nothing but tragedy. There are plenty of other things they can do for the global environment, so he asked for their help to oppose the transfloration system. Anyway, Taoshiru along with Yomiko found a place where he can ask for help. They were lucky that someone helped them reach the hospital. The staff immediately put oxygen into her and was about to bring her to the emergency room. On their way, he was in panic, asking Yomiko not to give up because he noticed that she was gasping for air. So he shakes her, but there's no response. Worst of all, she trembled convulsively, so he yelled at her not to think about dying. Until they reached the emergency room, and the staff slammed the door and left him outside. He waited outside until 3 police arrived and interrogated him. They asked if the body of the killer is covered with vines, but they are wrong. He explained that its entire body was made out of vines. It could expand and contract its vines like a coil of rope. They were shocked and hard to believe since it's possible. Since transfloration is a process in which a spirit blossom born from a seed grows using the flesh and soul as nutrients. In other words, animal cells are not being directly replaced by plant cells. Rather, they are being devoured by the plant cells from within the body. As a result, the body can no longer move. According to the police, the fact that the culprit is able to mobilize to that extent as a spirit blossom indicates that some kind of mutation has occurred. Almost as if the animal cells have assimilated. The lady leader asked them how they could find the monster, but no one answered. So she ended their investigation and left. One of the police told his companion named Hirajishi that he will be leaving too. So the latter and Taoshiru were left in the hospital. The police told the latter not to worry because Yomiko was a tough gal. Anyway, the 2 police were riding in the elevator when suddenly, one of the police asked their leader why Yomiko was attacked when the culprit always targeted families up until that moment. The latter told him that maybe there was something special about Yomiko and that it wasn't just a random attack, so she asked him to look for Yomiko for her. But in her opinion, there's another case that wasn't done at random either. Then he left the hospital. However, the doctor said that they were able to save Yomiko. Taoshiru was shocked when the doctor said that it was just a few centimeters off and the veins could have pierced her heart and spine. The stab wound in the back grazed the edge of the right rib cage and penetrated the stomach, crushing 2 ribs and parts of the lungs. Because he grabbed Yomiko a few centimeters hoping she could avoid the attack, but she's still lucky that it didn't penetrate her heart. The doctor continues that Yomiko will wake up once she recovers, but the damage to her organs that he mentioned earlier was quite severe, particularly in the stomach. The thing that pierced her tore through her body haphazardly, almost as if the blade was constantly undulating. They did their best to stitch up the damage, but it depends on how things progress. There is a possibility the tissue will die instead. In that case, they will have to remove 90% of the stomach and Yomiko will never be able to eat normally again. Taoshiru couldn't control his emotions, so he ran away, but Hirajishi followed him, so he was caught. When the latter asks him where he is going, and he tells him that he is going to kill the bastard who stabbed Yomiko. He yells at the police, claiming that they heard its desire to kill before it stabbed Yomiko. He was sure that he could find it if he just listened to the spirit blossoms in that area and looked around. He was surprised when Hirajishi told him that he'll die since he couldn't find it. The culprit was constantly going to be radiating its desire to kill. If he thinks the culprit might still be hiding out in the area, he was wrong, because it's been 7 hours since she was stabbed. If it was hiding out around the hospital to go after Yomiko, he would have heard its desire to kill already. The fact that he hasn't means that it's already changed its hiding location. He asked Taoshiru if he was going to search the entire country when he only got 2 years left. He also asked him if he was going to spend that precious time on pointless revenge. The latter seems confused, but when he remembers that Yomiko might not be able to eat again and she might not smile ever again, he can't stand the thought of it. He will never forgive it for what it's done to her. So those 2 years meant nothing to him. Hirajishi seems amazed at him, so he told him that he won't get anywhere on his own because the police have requested that the Transfloration Institute cooperate with them regarding the serial murders. And he nominated him as a special investigator since he saw the culprit. Taoshiru burst into tears and thanked Hirajishi for that. However, the latter reminded him not to tell anyone about his ability since it was for his own protection. He also added that he will contact him later, then leave the hospital. 2 days had passed when the chief called him. First, he was included in the investigation team, then said that all members of that team should go to the police station to discuss the situation, including him. Then a car stopped in front of him, and the man inside asked him to take a seat. He follows the order, but when he was already sitting inside the car, someone told him that he could put on a suit since he'll make the police think even worse of them. He was irate, so he turned to him to see who it was. The person furrowed her brow and told him not to turn his dirty face on her. So he talked back and told her that he will buy a suit when he can, and that she was so arrogant. As a result, the car was shaking since they started to fight. So the man asks the two to at least introduce themselves before fighting. He thought that the two were young, so before it gets worse, he introduced himself as Yu Kunaibe, from the Research Institute of the 4th Transfloration Hospital Public Relation Department. The girl follows him and introduces herself as Akira Yatsuka, Deputy Chief of Administration of the 4th Transfloration Hospital. So Taoshiru also introduces himself, but when he does, Akira yells at them asking why they need him. You simply say that he was the one who saw the culprit. She was surprised that Taoshiru was the one who saved Yomiko. When she mentioned the name, Taoshiru became curious, but Akira turned his face to her left and reminded him that his department is still part of the hospital's admin. Taoshiru finds the girl irritating, so he remains silent and keeps a sharp eye on her, especially when she says that he already told the police who was the culprit, so he should keep his mouth shut. According to Yu and Akira, the police were going to find out, so it's better if they handled it themselves since they could use germicides and other things. Taoshiru insists that it's good that the police are helping them, which is why Akira finds human imbecile for being ignorant. Furthermore, Yu asks him that he understands his desire to get revenge for Yomiko, but in no event should he kill it. He also added that if what he said is true, then the culprit is an extremely valuable specimen. They're the key to human evolution. Despite being a heterotroph, it still lives normally. Soon there will be no point in maintaining their lifestyle as their planter is running short of oxygen. But those idiot cops plan to kill them without understanding its true value. He reminds him that their duty is to get them to the hospital alive at all costs. Hirajishi also says that if Taoshiru wishes, they will allow him to get his revenge as soon as their research is finished. But in his mind, it will take decades before he does. Akira interrupts and says that she can assure that being a guinea pig is 1,000 times worse than death. Taoshiru suddenly held his stomach because in 2 years, he was also called a guinea pig. After a while, their car stopped at the police station. The lady introduced her name as Mine Yatsuka, a police inspector, while the man on her side is Tasaki, a sub-inspector. Kari suddenly bent down and it seemed like she was hiding her face. But Yatsuka already noticed her, so she greeted her and praised her for being great as always because she was her niece. Anyway, Tasaki says that the police would like to guarantee that they will cooperate. It turns out that the culprit is a heterotroph, so they would like the help of the Transfloration Hospital. Yatsuka asks them how many people from the hospital can help them to solve the case. Yu replied that there were 6, but if necessary, they can call more employees. Tasaki interrupts him and says that they will decide on that issue. They don't work for their hospital, so they don't allow any information to leak out. So Kunaibe apologizes and says that they'll open up a request if they think they need to involve more people. Taoshiru, who was intently listening to them, suddenly remembered Hirajishi's words, to beware because the hospital had a bad relationship with the police. It turns out that the police had to deal with all the cases related to transfloration. On the other hand, Tasaki showed them all the information about the case and was about to make a brief summary of it. Taoshiru sees the files and gets curious regarding the name, so he asks them what is Ivy. Yatsuke told him that it's the culprit's nickname because its body is made up of vines, which is why they call it Ivy. It's easier to remember because before, they knew nothing about it and just called it a serial killer, but it's more convenient to use a nickname. Anyway, Tasaki explains that so far, Ivy has 10 cases recorded with 25 people killed. All victims with families of 3 to 4 and all attacked by surprise. It probably moves along the ceiling and walls. The victims were killed with a single blow to the heart. However, the children also have wounds on their hands. Akira interrupts and asks about the wounds, then immediately takes notes of every word. Yatsuka replied that they assumed they were holding something and Ivy ended up injuring them while trying to immobilize it. The latter thought that last time, they found a piece of candy lying on the floor. They were curious if that could be what the child was holding. She assumes that Ivy has picked it up, but dropped it while climbing the wall. It's still too early to draw conclusions because someone else may have dropped it. On the other hand, Tasaki asked them to take a look at all 10 scenes where the crimes took place. Since they know that the criminal is not human, they want to hear the opinion from the Institute. However, Taoshiru bent down and thought that Yomiko wasn't holding anything when she was being attacked. So he told them that Ivy strikes families, but she has no one, and there's nothing in common with the other victims. Akari suddenly turned to him and immediately took note of his statement. According to Yatsuka, Yomiko's case may be an exception, that is why they must investigate further. Perhaps they will find out who Ivy really was. They went to a shooting range. Taoshiru was amazed at how sharpshooter Yatsuka was. He noticed that the paper was burning because she used incendiary bullets. It was designed to combat heterotrophs because who would have thought that the culprit would end up being a plant? She told them that the police will supply guns and bullets for self-defense and destruction of Ivy. Kunaibe interrupts and asks her what if they use up too many bullets because there are several heterotrophs on the streets and the oxygen they can produce can end up starting a fire. Yatsuka replied that they were aware of the risks, but they need the right weapons to protect people. The culprit already killed 25 people and it can climb walls and hide. Then she asks Kunaibe if he was suggesting using an ordinary bullet to fight. She also added that they knew that several heterotrophs can suffer because of one mistake, that they must protect humans. In the end, she reminds them to be careful with the weapon. Later on, in the Research Institute head of the Public Relation Heterotroph Unit, a lady couldn't move because Kunai was losing his anger and throwing everything inside the office. He was furious and cursed because the police had already known everything. The lady told him that heterotroph is classified as property. Of course humans have more value. As a result, Kunai suddenly threw books at her. Luckily, she dodged it. He also told her that they needed to get Ivy to the hospital at all costs because he was not going to allow them to burn it. Then he asked for the nth. According to the lady, the transfloration units had already given their permission. Somch contacted 10 amps. Only 6 of them have responded so far, and the discussion with the financial committee about the funding has no progress. Kyujib told the lady to write everything he would say. Install net in the Lab 14, and the net must be strong and fire resistant. A year ago, he thinks Lab 6 was busy with a lot of research on herbicide for heterotrophs. He wants the list of results in order of effectiveness. Maybe it will help contain Ivy. The lady suddenly stopped because she was curious if that was the name of the culprit. Then he called her by her name, Yako, ordering her to leave because he wants to be alone. So the latter immediately left him and slammed the door. When she was already outside, she heard a loud sound coming from inside of the office. She made fun of Kunai and hoped he would die. There were 2 people eating at a canteen, then an old man approached them for their cooked chicken. The man asks her about the school. The girl lightened her face and said that she was having fun. But it looks like the man didn't believe her since a close place full of negative energy can't be fun. When she told him that she likes it, he was convinced. However, when she was about to grab food on the plate, it accidentally fell on the ground. She immediately took the food, but the man didn't let her eat it since the floor was full of germs. So he gave her a bowl so that she could put the dirty food in it, then offered his tofu to her. She declines his offer and says that they have some green brothers at home. Anyway, their attention was caught by an ad on the TV about transfloration. It says that becoming a beautiful flower, not only will one receive 10 million yen, but one will also help with the environment and the well-being of the inhabitants. However, 2 men entered the canteen, so the owner greeted them. They immediately find a table, and the man with long hair orders a fried chicken with soup on the side. The owner asks them if it's okay because payment in advance is required. The long-haired man took out some coins on his jacket and put it on the table. As a result, the owner saw that his hands had some emerging plant in it. The owner seems frustrated Basai's from the moment they enter the canteen. He knew that they can only pay for the soup. She and her companion saw them and said that they're from the beggar's neighborhood. They're going through the transfloration process, but are already out of money, and they spend it on living. The girl felt sorry for the 2 men eating just the soup. She got an idea. She asked the man if they could give the food that fell on the ground. It's a pity for her that they can't buy food, so she stood up and took the plate with dirty foods and walked towards the 2 men. She interrupts the 2 men and offers the food. But when the long-haired man was about to take it, his eyes widened when he saw that the food was already dirty. So he looks at her and asks her if she also treats her friends like that. Instead of answering his question, she asks them if they want it or not. One of them immediately took one. The girl was delighted and said that beggars have no right to choose anything. But she furrowed her brow when the long-haired man told her that one day, she will also have to eat someone else's leftovers. Numerous people gathered in a building for a strike. They have placards that say no oxygen tax increase. They were members of the anti-transfloration faction who opposed raising the oxygen tax. However, the girl waved her goodnight to the man and went upstairs to sleep. The man stared at her and seemed worried. Anyway, he received some mail regarding his bill about health insurance, property tax, and the oxygen tax. He was sad because Megu's high school tuition is 300,000, and if he added his projected savings for that year, he would be short by about 40,000. So he decided to delay paying for his health insurance a bit since he was not getting sick anytime, and he got temp insurance anyway. He remembered that he didn't pay the residency tax the last time, so it will double and could cost 33,000 yen for the both of them. As for the oxygen tax, it's 28,000 yen. He thought that the 5th of his salary was enough for breathing. His eyes widened when he remembered that Megu needs to apply to high school that month as well, but he was shocked when he found out that it's 5,000 yen per document. He seems frustrated because he needed to submit at least 3 copies of the application form, which means he needed a lot of money. After that, he went to the school asking one of the staff regarding the application form since it cost too much. Back in his time, it was only 2,000 yen. The staff told him that the administrative process has gotten more complicated since then, and they needed to manually carry out the background check before the entrance exam. He was irate and decided not to pay the 15,000 yen. The staff suggested that he dip into his savings. But he was saving up for Megu's enrollment fees, so he didn't want to withdraw from that. He asks the staff if he can't ease the strain on his wallet, but the staff is just a part-timer in the school and get paid as much as he does. Then the staff suggests to him that if he can't get the money for himself, find Megu a job, but it looks like he didn't like the idea since 15,000 yen is all he needed to change his daughter's life. He was frustrated, so he planned to get another part-time job. Suddenly, the principal arrived asking him if he was Okimura, Megu's father. Then he told him if he has any questions about their fees, they can proceed to his office. So he followed the principal and went into his office. He immediately asked him regarding the fees. He was shocked and couldn't believe it when the principal told him that he would help him. But he went silent when the principal told him that there's a condition. He wants him to attend the anti-transfloration faction rally. He was hesitant since he was not really into those kinds of political activities. The principal apologized to him because the activity is something of a coercive invitation and for holding their admission form hostage like that. But he believes that will shape the future of those children. When he heard that it's for the future, it looks like he changed his mind and quickly asked if he had to buy anything. According to the principal, he doesn't need to buy anything and won't force anything from him. He just wanted him to attend once and see if it piqued his interest. Then if he feels he doesn't like it, then he can stop after that. Then he offered Okumura a drink and asked if it's a deal. Meanwhile, numerous people attend a session about the anti-transfloration system faction hearing assembly. Ama, who seems like an MC, stood up and spoke against the Anti-Transfloration Institute. People were shouting so Okumura was not comfortable, but he has to endure it for the sake of the admission form. Then his attention was caught by a lady who was about to speak, because he has seen her in class meetings. She's Seitu-kun's mother. The lady says she was broke and lived with her husband and 2 children. They both work, but have no savings either. Their monthly income is 240,000 yen, which 60,000 goes into oxygen tax. That tax basically serves to pay the people who undergo transfloration. She also mentioned that she saw on TV a special feature on how transflorated people extravagantly waste the money they earned. Buying brand items, eating yakiniku and fruits, and having fun at the amusement park. Meanwhile, she hasn't ever been able to take a vacation or spend time with her family. She wishes the transfloration office would reduce or remove that oxygen tax. After they heard it, some people say they can forgive just giving 10 million yen just like that to the people who've made an effort. Other people yells, why do they take money from the living and give it to the dead? They find it ridiculous no matter how they look at it. Then they clap their hands for their speech, but Okumura remains silent and just listens about their concerns. However, Hanjima-san was wearing headphones from the Metropolitan Police, was calmly listening to the assembly. She comments that those fools are in denial of reality. A man went to the car and asked Hanjima-san if the gathering was chaotic or any violence. The old lady says that there's no mention of an opposition staff getting murdered so far. She thinks the intel on the murdered being a spirit blossom hasn't leaked yet. It's just a dump full of worthless human complaints. The man told her that she didn't need to say it like that because those are the cries of the citizens' souls. They've got to take them in. They both made an evil laugh when Hanjima-san, who's his boss. They have great plans. The man remembers that he picked up the opposition pamphlet, so he reads it and says that live a life of coexistence without relying on transfloration restrictions. After long years of research, they raised high oxygen releasing algae at the harbor, and with constant sunlight, it can provide beautiful air. That nation has only 3 ice-free harbors, but they could produce clean oxygen by water electrolysis with just 45% of the nation's electricity, so anyone can breathe in that area. Hanjima-sen contradicts it and says that they need fresh water for that kind of chemical reaction. They had to melt and distill the frozen seawater. The process of melting ice, distilling it then electrolyzing it would use enormous amounts of electricity, about 100 nuclear plants worth. The man asked her if they tried hard enough, even 100 of those could be built. Hanjima-san says it's possible, but their world will never ditch the transfloration system. Because ultimately, they want to reduce their population. On the other hand, Yatsuka told everyone in their meeting that victims also have one common point. All the families make about 30 million yen a year, and the people whom most would call the rich are meeting disaster. Kunai looks confused and asks Yatsuka if the culprit is not planning on stealing the money, so the latter confirms to them that it doesn't seem like that's their goal. Maybe it's just blind violence to those folk or some kind of Robin Hood act. Anyway, Akira peeped at the window. She saw that the candy-licking rich were being attacked, while Taoshiru looks into deep thought about the situation. Later, few policemen were climbing on the building searching for anything, when Kunai arrived at the scene. One of the police told him that there are 5 apartments in the area, and they found scratch wounds and broken bricks. That is definitely Ivy's way of infiltrating inside or escaping. They also found a few odd parts that were stuck inside the wall. Then he showed it to Kunai. The latter takes it, and he observes that it seems to be part of a cat's claw. The man was surprised, so he clarified that it's a plant with a hook on it. Technically, it's from the Rubiaceae family, and it grows on top of trees which get caught by their hooks. Few people heard it, and it seems they were surprised and asked if Ivy is one of those cat's claw plants. But Kunai didn't reply, so the man asked him again what's wrong. The latter explains that once that cat's claws reach the top of trees, they grow their branches sideways. Those plants interfere with other plants' growth overseas, and because of the hooks, it can be pain to take care of. So they were treated as harmful plants, which is why their seeds aren't in the transfloration hospital. On the other hand, Taoshiru along with Akira and Yatsuka were riding on the elevator. The latter wanted to have a conversation with her niece Akira, but the latter seemed didn't like it and just answered her questions in simplest terms until they reached the floor. When they arrive at their destination, Akira observes that there is no light, but Yatsuka ignores her and starts the briefing regarding their case. According to her, the first victim, the Hiyama family, is part of Ivy's serial murders case. The crime at the bottom entrance. And for some reason, the master of the household, Hiyama Aisuke, was stabbed on the 6th floor of his home and fell to his death. Taoshiru commented that it's a special case. Yatsuka agrees with him because there's a high chance that the motivation for the 8 cases took place in that area. But they couldn't figure out what happened on that floor. All they know is that Ivy climbed up at the wall. They also discovered a number of scratches on it. Ivy jumped out at the same time as Hayam and fell to the roof by climbing the wall. Yatsuka showed them a picture of the wall. The penetration and escape passaha marks have a vast difference because the escape hole is much bigger. So basically, Ivy's body had some kind of burden during its escape. Akira and Yatsuka were having a conversation while Taoshiru wandered around the crime scenes. Suddenly, he asks them if Ivy might be looking for something. He thought that spirit blossoms are creatures that retain very little individuality. Most of them possess no faculty of thought. All they do is resonate the feelings asking them at the time. There's probably not a single trace left of Ivy's murderous intent, nor of the emotions they felt while carrying away that something. If he wants to kill Ivy with his own hands, he has to get much closer to it. He cannot fight them with his current resources. However, he heard something from a spirit blossom, so he put his hand on the wall and told them that there's a room on the side of the wall. He looks at the floor plan of the building and notices that the room has weird measurements. There's a 3 square meter room on the other side. Akira was bewildered and asked him how he knew it. He simply told her that he had feelings. Yatsuka concluded that it must be a hidden safe. She doesn't think it can be simply opened, but she promises that they will do something about it. Worst comes worst, they'll ram the wall down. Later on, the investigation ended. The police who were climbing on the building were already going down. Then it was just Taoshiru and Akira in the car. The latter was furious because Taoshiru was supposed to tell what he found alone in private. He was irate and clenched his fist and said that the reason is to corner Ivy, and he doesn't care about the future of the Transfloration Hospital. Akira furrowed her brows and warned him that being unable to move up is bothering her. She doesn't care about Kunai's Supreme Human Revolution plan. Taoshiru was bewildered on how exactly they were supposed to catch Ivy without relying on the police since the hospital has no soldiers. His eyes widened when Akira told him that Kunai got private mercenaries involved, so she was teaming up with retired soldiers. He accuses Taoshiru of spilling every bean yet has no connections whatsoever. Then she asks him if he have plans on getting his revenge. Before he could react, his phone rang. He was sweating when he found out that the Kaller were from the hospital. They were asking him to come to Yomiko's surgery as fast as he can because they will be taking off half of her stomach. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you love this manga. Have a good day.